7. Hey, White Sox fans. Oh, yeah, we took a while off. SB Nation said, chill out, guys. Too many podcasts, too much stuff, too much content. You've sold too many ads. Slow down. So, we took December off. What are you going to do? Hey, I know some other people did. Jerry Reinsdorf, Ken Williams, Ray Kahn. But anyway, we're going to get to that in the second half of this podcast. But welcome. My name is Brett Ballantini, your very favorite White Sox fan, and I'm happy to be here with you for one of those, popular favorites. We call them Meet the Player podcast. Now, this guy we're doing the podcast with, we've already published this Meet the Player. We're gonna link it so you can read more about it. You've already read it, committed to memory, but go read it again. That's linked. But talking about that, facing grilling questions about his Meet the Players for the first time here exclusively on Southside Sox, it's Zach Hayes joining me at Podcast 79. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh, man. Thank you for giving me the time.
As I say, you might think you've heard this before. You probably haven't. My very best friend and favorite member of Southside Sox, it's Zach Hayes.
Wow.
We are tight.
To what do I owe the honor? What have I ever done for you?
And if other people have heard that about themselves, maybe I was lying, or maybe it's just a 50-way tie. Hard to determine.
They always told me I was the favorite anyway, so
Okay, let's keep that rolling, and let's spill right into the Meet the Players, which again, folks have a committed memory, but let's get it live on audio, maybe for some of you even video. Let's jump right to the 2000 ALDS, which apparently, even though I was trying to grow a playoff beard at the playoff games, was your first pretty good White Sox memory, or maybe first White Sox memory.
Yeah, I don't even know if memory is the right word necessarily, like impression. I don't necessarily have a great play-by-play in my head. I do distinctly remember sitting in a living room of the small townhouse I grew up in on a crappy old boxy TV that was sitting on the stool in the middle of the room, watching with my parents, and someone's getting thrown out at home plate, or I'm saying safe, but they're actually out. I don't know exactly what's going on, and I know that they're losing, and that's the first White Sox thing I can really recall, I guess.
Well, it makes you feel any better, Zach. I was at the one home game. I don't remember, but with my father, and he was yelling safe every time players were out too. So, I mean, you had some company there. Of course, he had less excuse. He has a few more decades on you as a human and a fan, but just as wrong. Yeah. And, the funny thing is, dear listeners, even at that very young age, Zach Hayes knew how badly Jerry Manuel had been outmanaged by Lou Piniella in that series. He knew it. He had a metric for it. He looked it up immediately. It's only been confirmed since, because, yes, if any of you remember back, 22 years ago, that was rough. And I'm not even just talking about my haphazard attempt at a playoff beard. Boy, I thought, I'd have weeks, but I had what did it turn out to be about 3 days. Zach, I had just got hired into, it would have been my second sports job. It was the only actual real good one I ever had. And my boss was a Cubs fan, and I still took the job. I remember going in and on my first day saying, you know what? I need to take tomorrow off because I'm going to the White Sox playoff game. And he didn't fire me. So, I guess there was some crosstown understanding there. And when he lost some bet to me, he had to wear a White Sox jersey the whole day. So
I had to wear a Sammy Sosa jersey when the Cubs won the 2016 World Series. It was not fun. I took the field in the playoffs. It was a good bet, but I was the resident Chicago baseball fan in Annandale-on-Hudson, New York in 2016. So we're not many of us up there.
I think it's safe to say, Zach, a lot of really, really bad things were triggered by the Cubs, even making it to the World Series, much less winning the World Series. I dare say making the Cubs World Series win seems small in the rearview mirror. So yeah, I'm going to throw the Cubs under the bus on that one. Had they just done what they always do, oh gosh, the world would be a much better place right now, but that's a different podcast.
I guess if there's any ridiculous silver lining to what happened a week later, it's that everyone forgot about the Cubs a little bit quicker than they would have otherwise. Yes. I was in college, and I'm just glad. I've always said in the back of my mind, it always sat someday the Cubs are going to win the World Series, and I'm going to have to deal with the fans I spent my whole life talking
Mm.
smack to. And I'm just glad they had the courtesy to do it when I was living in 8 states away. So
Yeah.
I'll give them that much.
And and not to lose, not to get lost in the fact that the White Sox won first. That's pretty big. I know there's no rivalry and they don't care about the White Sox. And I guess some White Sox fans don't care about the Cubs. Oh, I'm pretty happy that they won it a decade before the Cubs did.
Stop living in the past, man.
Oh yeah, right. White Sox fever, catch it.
That's what happens when you get there first.
The this has come up many times when we've just had general podcast discussions and even in Meet the Players discussions. It turns out I have been at a key game along with, unknowingly, because even though we're best friends now, we weren't then. But I think we have already discussed, but not on podcast, Zach, we were both at Mark Buehrle's perfect game. And interestingly enough, we had just given up our season tickets that were in section 147, which I believe you were sitting at for the perfect game.
Hi, man. Let's see. I have the ticket frame here. Take a look.
Proof of concept.
I got it. 147 row 1 seat 3. It was they weren't our tickets. They were they were given away basically. They were someone else's season tickets. There was some kind of deal in place where we got them, but
not a hot year.
Yeah,
so
fun.
That would be a year that you would be able to get a first row ticket to the White Sox, I suppose. Memories of that day, catching the vibes.
Yeah, man. One feeling that I will never forget was watching, gosh, I can't even remember who it was that hit the fly ball that became the Dwayne Wise catch off the top of my head.
Gabe Kapler, crazy race.
Was it Gabe Kapler? That was the name that I thought, but I wasn't. It was Gabe Kapler. Okay. Yeah. I will never forget the feeling, like the sinking feeling in my stomach when the ball left the bat and being like, I mean, I'd seen, even at that point, I think I'd seen enough baseball where you get a sense sometimes when the ball leaves the bat, when you know it, you know it. And I think everyone in the park was kind of like, there it goes. And it's funny, the people sitting in front of us, because it says row 1, but it's actually like the third row because you have row AA or BB or something like that right in front. And the people in front of us had like a sign for Dwayne Wise. I don't remember what it said, but yeah, exactly. Dwayne Wise. I think he didn't even start. He didn't even get in the game until the 9th. And so, it was a strange day in many ways. I feel like I know, like, I had 3 different branches of my family who also wound up at the game completely different in different ways in different places. A strange and serendipitous day, I might say.
Yeah, I remember the gasp. The air went out of the park for that brief, whatever it was, like 3 seconds or whatever, the ball's in the air, because we all knew what was going to happen. And somehow it didn't happen. And I will say, not that it wasn't a big step out. I mean, the bases were full, but I did turn my head and said that Josh Field was going to hit a grand slam. So.
The Josh Field grand slam. I remember him he was playing first base and he almost botched an easy pop-up in the wind somewhere down the line, if I remember correctly. I can't even remember like half my friends' birthdays. I'm telling you that, man. I suck.
Well, you listen, you remember the important stuff. At least, if you're a baseball fan, that's pretty important.
The important stuff, right?
Yeah. Go figure. Well, so we were there together. So many of us on Southside Sox were all at the blackout game or maybe a particular playoff game. And I think maybe more than one of us are at the perfect game, but maybe not. But yes, again, my
seem to recall somebody at some point saying it maybe, but or maybe it was someone might have been Buehrle's no-hitter as well. But well, perhaps, I don't know, maybe to some extent our presence at such large moments is a large part of what leads us here. I don't know, those tend to be difference makers in terms of lasting impressions, and I don't know what drives fandom.
The life-defining moments that have brought Zach Hayes and Brett Ballantini together at Southside Sox and writing for Southside Sox. Okay, now I'm going to have to turn on you, and we're going to have to stand at opposite podiums, and you are going to have to explain to me why a very reasonable, very intelligent, very funny Baseball fans such as yourself chooses Major League as his favorite baseball film. Believe me, you have more company than not. Most people on this site, or at least among our writing staff, seem to prefer that movie. I can't figure it out, so I would like a little bit of explanation beyond what you threw in the Meet the Players.
Man, I don't even remember what I said there. I will acknowledge that, like many movies of that era, there is a lot of stuff in there that is not aged well. Such is the nature of art, I suppose. And we can appreciate that critically. That being said, I think when you look at it, it just really stands out within the genre of baseball movie, because most baseball movies are so bloody corny. They take themselves, I mean, we've had this discussion about Field of Dreams ad nauseum for the past however many months, because what else has there been to talk about the White Sox?
Right.
You know, they're so corny, and they're so kind of self-absorbed and important, and like much of the modern game of baseball in general, just like really wrapped up in its own overwrought history and kind of contrived meaning. I find a lot of baseball movies just to be really like just almost unwatchable like that. And you know, like A League of Their Own would be another exception for, like, you know, that doesn't quite fall into those tropes. But Major League doesn't take itself too seriously. It's like, it's dirty, it's funny, I would say it's like the ball player's baseball movie, you know. Again, lots of things that have not aged particularly well, as I mean, it's Charlie Sheen, for Christ's sake, you know. But I mean, it's just there's something about, you know, I mean, there's a lot of elements of baseball culture and sports culture that are horrible and toxic that are reflected in that movie, but there are also a lot of elements of it that are incredibly fun and hilarious and are, I don't know, it reminds me of why I love baseball and what's great about baseball 10 times more than Field of Dreams or God knows, Bull Durham, you know, or kind of a lot of the movies that are typically cited in the classic classic category.
Yeah, I remember at the time having seen Bull Durham thinking, geez, this is a really quick rush to sort of play off of that in a way that's just universally, and obviously Bull Durham, you know, has its flaws, but just as like universally dumber. And, you know, it's worth saying too, we have interesting demographics among the staff on the site, and certainly Major League hits a sweet spot for a good chunk of you as viewers. You know, for me, I was already able to say, oh, well, hey, you know, I'm too highbrow for that, or, you know, whatever my attitude was about it. It just struck me as sort of dumb and sort of rip-offy. But, you know, if I was 5-10 years younger, I'm sure it would have hit me, certainly would have hit me much differently. And some of the humor would have got under my skin and been like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing. Willie Mays Hayes, at first he slid and he couldn't even get to the base. And then he was suddenly a great player. And I'll bite through my tongue, but realize that, okay, Cleveland can win and even beat the White Sox and root to winning, and I can get past that. But, you know,
the White Sox seem to find themselves as villains in baseball movies, like way more out. Like they're always kind of the big bad team at the end that needs to be beaten in multiple movies. And I was growing up, I was just like, why we're not there. But you know, another thing about Major League, I will say though, is that, you know, I think it's pretty well known that Charlie Sheen was a ball player, and he was chucking like mid to upper 80s. And like, I look at the rookie Dennis Quaid in a Tampa Bay Devil Rays uniform is freaking ridiculous. Like, come on, Charlie Sheen kind of actually looks like a ball player. It's well cast. They just, I think, embody the fun of it more than almost any other movie to conclude.
Just like the Field of Dreams discussion, this one's gotten away for me, and now it's turned out to be a commercial promoting Major League. These things always turn on me, Zach. But I will point out, because again, I heard the bell ring, and it means that Charlie Sheen's baseball skill necessitates that I share the fact that Charlie Sheen and I went to the same baseball camp in very, very rural Missouri, where you really couldn't do anything but play baseball. So, you know, hey, listen, unfortunately, I never got to play a role in Major League and be the wild thing. Okay, let's get back on the same podium. Let's chat in something that I think that we might be against the grain on, which I find very hard to believe. Folks seem to think if you support Mark Buehrle for the Hall of Fame, you must be some kind of homer. And I actually find that rather offensive. Granted, Mark Buehrle is not Okay, he's not Mike Mussina. He's not okay. He's not a slam dunk candidate, and he's not maybe in any ballot. Maybe in no ballot is he the best pitcher candidate. Maybe eventually he will be. But the idea that he's not a Hall of Famer, or that it's silly that he could be considered a Hall of Famer, or wow, the Hall of Fame is way too big if Mark Buehrle's in it, is not just wrong. It's sort of offensive, Zach.
Yeah, Hall of Fame talk. Looking forward to it being nice for a second. It's that time of year, wrong? But yeah, Buehrle, I've changed my views on the Hall of Fame a lot in recent years. And Buehrle is a large reason why, because I kind of stopped to think about it as I've gotten more and more just into being a very hardcore baseball fan and writing about it specifically and getting to know a lot of history and a lot of in-depth stuff, is that realizing that we knew that Mark Buehrle was something growing up. I don't think we anticipated when he was playing how quickly the Mark Buehrles of the world would disappear.
Yeah.
Put it that way. I remember hearing towards the end of his career, like, oh yeah, he's got, the streak of, he had, when he was with Toronto at the very end, he got blown up at the very end and missed his 15 straight year of 10 wins and 200 innings, which in 2015, everyone's kind of like, oh, like, cool, whatever. The idea of going 15 seasons, 10 wins, 200 innings, absolutely absurd these days. And Mark Buehrle, he did it throwing 86 miles an hour, like topping out 89. He was sitting like 83, 84 his last year, and he ran a mid-threes ERA up to the very end. He was special. And I think it's not the Hall of War. It's not the Hall of Stats. It's not the Hall of Milestones. It is the Hall of Fame. And I think it's okay sometimes to recognize after the fact that a guy, you weren't necessarily appreciating them as much as you maybe should. And I think that's something that we can probably admit with Buehrle, because now that we see how you don't have starters who throw, I was just looking at this earlier, you had 4 teams in 2021 that had 4 starters make 25 starts. Like, nobody makes 25, 30 starts. I mean, Robbie Ray led the league in innings pitched, and he was at 193. There's a lot of other factors at play here with this year specifically, but I mean, I think Buehrle is the perfect example of someone, especially as we hopefully exit the many years of hand wringing about Bonds and Clemens and Breitbart Kurt and those guys, that we can say, okay, let's take some time to appreciate the guys who we didn't because of all of this other hand wringing.
And to tie into your movie thoughts, a guy who enjoyed playing baseball, who very clearly had a great time playing and took it seriously enough, but didn't take it so seriously that anyone was going to die, whether he pitched or didn't, or won or lost.
I mean, when you can get away with saving a game in the World Series with,
some pops in you,
might get you pulled over, then it's, you can get away with anything. But it's such a self-serious age to some extent. And I put it this way: if every team had a Mark Buehrle, there would be a lot more baseball fans. That's another angle about Mark in the Hall of Fame that I've only come across recently that I support, is that the White Sox don't have a lot of generational stars. We don't have, I grew up into the, reading up to the gills about like Luke Appling and Louis Aparicio and the Go-Go Sox, because what the heck else was there? And the first person that this was broached about was Todd Helton in the Rockies. And Todd Helton is the icon for the Rockies. And for a fan base, it kind of sucks to be told the guy that you idolized for 10, 15 years, who was the reason you love baseball, who had an incredible career, is the best player in your franchise's history, say, oh, Hall of Famer? Of course not. Like, what are you talking about? And that kind of sucks. So yeah, let's have a big hall and let's appreciate guys like Mark Buehrle, who was special, and because of that meant a lot to a lot of people.
And if you want to pick bones of the White Sox front office, which sometimes we do, you can point out the fact that he does not have a Hall of Fame case, if not for his final acts in the game post White Sox, when they made the decision to go John Danks instead of Mark Buehrle, rather than perhaps both is always an option. It doesn't seem to be for the White Sox on the South side, but because listen, he went to Miami, and I think a lot of people, probably even in Chicago, said, well, okay, it's not going to be the same. He won't be as good. The White Sox made a decision, and his career is going to not tank, but it's, of course, it's going to slip. It sort of didn't really up until that very last start of his career. And he could have continued to pitch, and he would have been a productive player.
Oh, from what I understand too, from what I don't remember where specifically I read this. I mean, he tore up his shoulder towards the end. He was throwing, if I remember that last start where he got blown up, he was throwing like 81 or something like that. He was, I think it finally kind of fell off for him towards the end there. But I mean, like after it, how many more 200 win pitchers are there going to be? And my nerd friends will say this is blasphemous, of course, but I think that means something. And I think the best way you could frame it with Buerhle right now is that if the difference between him and Andy Pettitte is pretty minimal, and I think Andy Pettitte is a pretty good Hall of Fame case, and I think a lot of Yankees fans will certainly tell you that Andy Pettitte is a very good Hall of Fame case. So there's exactly like you said, if Buerhle finishes his career in a White Sox uniform too, maybe we're looking at it a little differently. There's a lot of really dumb factors at play here. So you know what? Just like screw it, like let him in. Open it up. Give people reasons, give White Sox fans and Rockies fans reasons to go to Cooperstown.
For sure. And to the nerd friends, no, it doesn't have to mean what it used to mean, but that doesn't mean it doesn't mean anything. I mean, you still have to win. The game still has to be won, okay. And let's not forget, again, I guess I'm going to be the bad cop for this podcast. Let's point out again, the White Sox refused to, Mark did go back to the White Sox and say, if you can give me this number, I'm in Chicago. And the White Sox said, no, we were really to go 40 something million, but that extra million, no. Southside.
And yet, I think if I remember correctly, the numbers are pretty identical to what they gave Dallas Keuchel over like 3 years. Years ago. I mean, inflation, things like that. But some of the numbers you see in retrospect are kind of like, seriously, like you really let the difference between 50 and 55 million is the reason why Mark Buehrle didn't finish his career in a White Sox uniform. That was it. And
it turns out to be a nice preview of the second half of this podcast. But before we take our break, I'm going to just ask one thing. And usually it turns out to be, the question is usually, hey, what did you think when I decided to get in touch and say, hey, you want to do the Southside Sox thing? I think in a rarer case, Zach, you may have been in touch with me. So at any rate, talk to me about what your impression of Southside Sox was and why you want to be a part of the site.
Oh man, I just wanted to write about the Sox more. I was writing for Pitcher List and a few other places, and I was writing mostly broad MLB stuff, like around doing player deep dives. And I definitely trended towards the Sox a little more when in my writing there. But it was a fantasy focused site at the time, so I was writing a lot about that, and I wanted to just start writing about the Sox more because I found it fun. I found it easy. It was something I could, do off the top of my head, and so I was like, all right, I know some folks who are writing here. They're cool people. Most of the stuff here is good stuff. Why not? Why not take a shot?
Interestingly enough, that's usually the feedback we get. Most of the stuff on the site is good stuff. Okay, we're going to take a break. This question segs into my next question, which will probably make Zach blush, which I love. And it won't involve his legs, but we're going to take a quick break because SB Nation needs to sell you stuff. We've been off for like a month, and I got to tell you, their revenue's tanked. So we're back. Buy the thing they're selling, or at least listen to the commercial. We'll be back in just a second. Hey, White Sox fans, guess what? It is podcast number 79. I'm lucky enough to host podcast 79, and I've been lucky enough to host all the 78 previous. Brett Ballantini, your very favorite White Sox friend, another guy who is maybe he's your second closest White Sox friend, is with me on this podcast. It's a Meet the Players podcast with Zach Hayes. Welcome to the second half. And hey, let me hit you with the question. Zach, I want to know this. I can use numbers like a color in the Crayola box. I'm not scared of them. I can use them in a dumb way, like speaking Spanish, but not really feeling Spanish. You, however, do your numbers differently. You're a great analyst. You have a lot of fun writing. So you have humor. You're not just one or the other. And we have a number of people who analyze well on the site. I won't name them all because there's too many, and I'm confused when I read all their stuff. So I don't want to give them any more shine. But That's a pretty rare gift. And I want to know how that comes to you, because for me, it's a labor. It's not just because I'm a more aged fan, I'm a more mature fan, but it's not something that I grasp as easily as it seems to come for you. Is it crawling over glass for you, or is it something that, as you're able to sort of learn, maybe you're a little bit more of a science mind, and then you're able to translate into writing that allows somebody like me, who's at least a half step behind you, to sort of grasp it and say, hey, listen, I think I'm sort of smarter now.
Um, well, I'll say my mom is a journalist and a writer in many different senses, so it runs in my blood. I cannot I cannot claim that I have any kind of special talent or anything. It's just it's the family business to some extent. But I wouldn't even say, I don't like to think of it as like being a half step. Everyone, people always say I feel like I'm a half step or a full step or whatever behind, and I think that's one of the things I enjoy about kind of mixing the two things when writing, is that it's most of the time it's just me writing what I'm learning in real time. Like, I'm not kind of going in there a lot of the time with a set understanding of a lot of the stuff. What the final product of a lot of these articles that you're kind of referencing here are the final product of just me looking at things and saying, what's this? What's this? What does this mean? And sometimes it leads nowhere. And I don't know. So if you're learning anything from my writing on it, it's because I only learned it as I was writing, damn near, if that makes any kind of sense, so I don't even really think of it as analytical writing. I'm kind of writing in I'm writing my own narrative as I'm coming through these things, or coming across them and working through them, I should say.
It's definitely a gift, and it's a gift you have. And, I like to consider myself, have been, and, even now in this role, not formally, but consider myself a little bit of a teacher. And it is always good to know that you're in a groove where you can connect with somebody and sort of get a point across them. And I know that's what you're getting, the feedback you get from your writing, and you're getting it from me now. But again, I think it's something that stands out as a pretty good gift, and you're clicking really well with it, because it's not, it's not stilted. It's not something that I stop reading because it's like, wow, you left me, I can't get in. And I suppose it helps to know that your unquenchable thirst for knowledge is just really propelling you along and saying, okay, listen, I want to know the answer to this question. And you're just willing to go a little bit further and say, maybe I am, to find out. But then beyond that, you're not just doing it for yourself selfishly. Thank you. Because you are then sharing it with the rest of us so that we can go, oh, okay, now I sort of get why, God, Kimbrel sort of sucks. And, I know that's the one that really sort of blew me away of all the stuff you did this year. But I mean, each one, and this goes for the Luke Smales and stuff of the site as well. We got, a number of people doing that. But I thought with some of the thoroughness you attacked things, particularly in light of the trades made, which seemed like steals, and seemed like Rick Hahn just killed the rest of the league this year. And I mean, on paper he did, in the moment he did, it didn't work out. But then explaining why is a big, I can just make a knee jerk and say, well, that guy's he's got a nice war. I think that's a good deal for us. But, it's nice to be able to say, oh, okay, I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable in where I'm at with this, because look, I've got some information, not just telling you what I want to hear, but giving me some pretty unbiased take, negative, sometimes positive, other times that, help fill out my knowledge of the team. And I hope that's what people come to Southside Sox for, maybe before they go to another side. I would certainly hope so. We have a pretty good roster of analysts now. And if you're missing on something, you're like, oh, I'm doing a pitcher listening, man, I can't do it. Then hopefully somebody else is picking it up saying, oh, hey, wait, we got a new guy. We better talk about this. Hey, Oscar Colas is on the team. Let's talk about him. And, thankfully, and Trevor was able to do that on the spot for us last year when like years before the actual signing, apparently the news broke. But it's something that really jumps out at me as something you're in a great groove of doing. And I appreciate you're doing it for us. But again, triple threat, man, doing six pack, done a little bit of recapping. I think there was a couple of recaps, fun. I like the fact that you're injecting the absurd and the humor into the recaps, because that's really all I look for in anybody writing. Just, make me laugh once. And then, of course, the analysis, which
Yeah, I
Makes
don't
me
really like the numbers that much. Like, this is the thing, is I like doing the recap. Like I am fully like I was a literature and history major in college. I have a master's degree in American studies. I'm entirely skeptical of empiricism and quantification and all of these things, which I think is kind of what helps me keep them at a relatable distance to some extent. But it's not really like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that like it's things are easier to understand when it's not like numbers for the sake of numbers. I find the stuff fascinating because it helps me like answer questions that I'm having with my eyes. I ask myself, why does Kimbrel suck? What tools do I have available to help me find out? Like I'm looking at his fastball and I'm saying, his fastball, like it seems like there's a big difference when he's like 95, 96 as opposed to 97, 98. And now we have the tools to be able to really look at those things in depth. And most of the numbers stuff is kind of just a residual of learning how to use those tools just to answer what my eyes are saying. So I'm kind of hoping I'm seeing the same thing, making an effort in the writing at least to see the same thing that everyone else is seeing, because no one likes experiencing it through solely the numbers without the eyes in front of you too.
Well, if I have my druthers, I'm going to keep you pinned to the wall on analysis. But I believe, sir, you have talked yourself into more recaps and fewer six packs next year, based on what I'm hearing.
I love doing this. I love looking at them. It's I shouldn't say I don't like the numbers. It's that they're not, they're a means to an end for me. I'm not someone who's super into analytics for the sake of like developing models and stuff. That's not really up my alley.
That's fine. That's fine. Keep dancing. The decision's made. Keep dancing. Okay, let's talk broadly about the White Sox, baseball, and the world at large. I have heard rumors, Zach. Again, it seems like it was a long time ago, so you're going to have to refresh me here. I'm a little slower fan than you. I think there was an off season. I think the White Sox were technically able to be part of that off season. First of all, were they? And were you impressed by the noise they made in the mini? We're going to spend $1 trillion before the lockout off season.
I was impressed that they had, the audacity that they had to try to sell us all the BS they did. It's like, and what, I'm not even mad. It's like, I'm not, it's what you expect. I find it funny to an extent when you do things like everybody knows that Bob Nightingale, as much of a joke as he is the chosen mouthpiece or the most reliable mouthpiece for the White Sox front office. So you see things like Nightingale tweeting that the White Sox are in on Justin Verlander all of 3 hours before Justin Verlander signing with the Astros breaks. And you say to yourself, what are they doing? What are they trying? Are they just like, I know when I'm being thrown a bone, guys, I just wish, and it's, I don't like it, but it's understandable to an extent that you would want to know what system you're going to be working under before you make any major moves. But it's just the insistence on BSing us at all corners is kind of is not impressive. Not impressive in the slightest. So you can say that, yeah, it's nice that they're throwing out all these rumors like, oh, we talked to Marcus Semmy and we had meetings with Scott Boras. It's we've been here before. It is.
You can tell the days where Bob Nightingale doesn't get his Ken Williams diary entry emailed to him first thing, because he's forced to then just sort of like go with what he thinks should be said. And then you get the things like, yeah, the White Sox are talking to, and, he like looks up and says, okay, veteran guy, maybe just a couple of years. Yeah, Justin Verlander. That sounds right. And then of course, immediately he gets the scolding telephone call from the front office, but he's like, I can't delete it.
Gonna hang my Verlander White Sox jersey right next to the Eduardo Escobar one.
That's fair. That is fair. Yeah, really. Gosh, what a roster you could build just on Nightingales. The Nightingale White Sox.
The Nightingale All-Stars, man.
Does it cut into speaking of narratives, does it cut into the story ownership wants to spin about, I'm going to just guess here, there not being enough money to pay players, when in like the 24 hours before a lockout, they spend however many billion, I don't know what it is. Was it $1 billion, $1 trillion? I don't know what it was, $1 billion something dollars. Or is that, am I dumber just to say that bad? And is there something deeper to that or more nuanced to that?
Oof, I mean, I'm not privy to anything at a close enough level to do anything more than speculate, but I think to me it says that the owners know at the very least that that line, the same line they tried to float over us for all of 2020, isn't quite going to work anymore. They're
Right.
not going to be able to cry poor.
Yeah.
They know that Bill DeWitt isn't going to be able to say that baseball is not a very profitable business. People are done being fooled by that. And I think also given just the general social climate right now, I think our tolerance for that would be kind of low. And I think even they to some extent understand that, and they are simply I think they're just going to try to bulldoze their will. The fact that they haven't sat at the table in more than a month says that they're pretty comfortable with whatever it is they want to do. I don't think it's. I think it's telling that a few teams wanted to win. I think the Texas Rangers spending all that money on Marcus Semien and Corey Seager might be, if anything, opportunism as much as it says anything about the current labor environment. Maybe, I mean, we saw when the lockout first commenced, Manfred very, very cynically initially cited the spending spree as a reason that actually everything is really working like it's supposed to. So that probably plays a large part into it, or at least some part into it. Lord knows what goes on in the minds of ownership circles and what they think is good for their bottom line. But it's the health, the economic. I think they know by this point the economics are a losing issue, and they just need to paint. I lost my train of thought, but it's all so complicated and depressing that that's God knows. There's nobody knows. I don't know.
Well, you've got a player group that the feeling is always that they can be broken because eventually there won't be money coming in, whereas apparently Jerry Reinsdorf will still be collecting last year's ticket kickback or whatever into this year. But the coffers seem to be sort of deep. I don't know that players could as easily punt a season or a big chunk of a season as ownership, because it never quite works that way. But the idea that that their line is pretty firm, seemingly. And their line also seems, I think, as you alluded, to be awfully logical. Again, in today's climate, the things they're saying, again, not that we're going to necessarily identify with the millionaires instead of the billionaires, but if you had to choose one, you would, especially when a number of these guys, they're still making considerably more, I dare say, than you or I, Zach. But I mean, we're talking about guys really being the lifeblood of the league, not making even the seven figures. It's easy to sort of see one side. It doesn't always seem reflected on Southside Sox. I'm curious with some of the pushback readers give sometimes, but it seems like a no-brainer to me that there is a side that is more right here, and that it's awfully easy to side with.
Yeah, it's a strange moment, and it's a different kind of labor moment than it was last year or the last several CBA negotiations, or even everyone wants to talk about 1994 as it being the most recent labor stoppage. But I don't necessarily think, from what I understand of it, I wasn't alive, of course, so I can only speak so much, but it doesn't seem terribly analogous. I think part of the issue is that there is a system that is close to irrevocably broken, and the players have hit a breaking point where they know that they are essentially being used. They know exactly how they're being used and how they're being treated as replaceable parts. They know the mechanisms that the owners are using to make that reality happen, via arbitration, via minimum salaries, via service time suppression, via using analytics to figure things out, like we shouldn't pay guys after they turn 30. So salaries have fallen for 3 consecutive years. There's kind of a breaking point here, and I think part of the reason why ownership is so comfortable, both with the spending money, the ones that did at least, and with the not negotiating, is that I think they're barring a radical change to the system and the power structures of Major League Baseball, the owners are still going to come out on top. They're still going to have the more advantageous side of the deal. The bar has been pushed so far towards the ownership side over the last few decades of labor negotiations as it is, that even some of the bigger concessions that the owners can make are still going to be wins and still going to lead to an incredibly favorable situation. And I think they're very aware of that. And I think the radio silence is maybe a reflection of that. So uh, and knowing that that's all the case, I don't know why you would side with them if you have to pick sides.
Yeah.
You know.
Almost by definition, probably in any of these circumstances, certainly in a sports circumstance, they can't lose. They can win like the least amount, the lesser amount. They can't lose. Losing means you don't have the structure that exists. Ownership by definition sort of has to win. And when some of the ownership has decided to say the really, really, really quiet thought bubble stuff out loud, and we've seen several different sources doing in different varieties, like what you do with draft picks, or how we are actually going to suppress the advancement of players to get that extra year, that special extra year that's probably all going to go away with the new agreement. Why not you thinking that way? That granted, they've shown their asses forever. I mean, that's another thing that just is part of this on ownership side. They're just going to do that, and they still get away with it. So you're right. Any loss by ownership is it's only so big a loss. They are still the ones signing the checks. They're still the ones running anything. They're still the ones who have basically set it up where it's impossible for them to lose money. It's just like business in America today. Whoa, this podcast is getting crazy, where you cannot lose. It's just, how much are you going to decide you have to win? And I guess the radio silence says, well, they're still holding out hope that somehow they can come back into 2022 with even a better position than before, which at this point, I think they're at the edge of the cliff. I don't think you can really push players. I don't think you can take any more than they already have.
I think that's kind of the moment that we're at right now. And I've personally, not to get too bleak, but I've been fairly convinced that we're going to be losing games next season for really ever since the character of the 2020 negotiations became clear. It seemed very, very obvious that this was not going, nothing was being done in good faith. And the fact that they're not, reportedly, as of, I think it was Passon who just reported today or yesterday, that they're not even expected to start up negotiations again for another 2-3 weeks. So the fact that the players side, I mean, that tells you that the players side is preparing to dig in too. And that is to some extent kind of what gives me hope too, because the ownership side is banking on this. I mean, the same thing has happened. It happened in the NBA in 1998. It's happened in almost every labor dispute in professional sports over the last 30 years, is that at the end of the day, when it comes time to lose paychecks, the players have difficulty staying together. And the ownership class is really, really good at pitting as you could say in almost every strata of society, kind of the very top 1-5% of players against everybody else. So by the time it's time to lose paychecks, the guys who are making minimum salaries are going to say, let's make a deal. The fact that they are digging in and saying, it seems at this point that spring training is being starting on time is already almost a lost cause. If we're not even going to start negotiating until the end of January, pitchers and catchers are only supposed to report in 40 days or something like that. It's so the fact that the players seem to be really digging into that extent tells you that they maybe feel like they just don't even have a lot to lose at this point. People like Max Scherzer is the I believe, I don't know what the exact role is, but he's the head of the player side of things. He's the top player representative, him and Andrew Miller. And Scherzer has been very, very vocal and on the record about saying the BS is over. Like, we are here to fight. We are here to get a fair deal for ourselves.
With the most to lose, which is not something to lose track of here. He really does. I mean, granted, he's made his money. It doesn't. He's got literally the most to lose this year. And he's the guy who's probably been, so far, he's the guy who can afford to be, but the most hawkish right now. And I mean, they signed a
2-year deal. He loses a good chunk of his salary coming up if there's a labor stoppage. And he signed a 2-year deal because he wanted to reset the market for starting pitchers. Because that is his job as a union representative, so he's somebody who is clearly very, very serious about this role. So I think there was kind of a lot of optimism maybe towards the commencement of the lockout as this kind of last ditch, like, well, there's a fair point to saying actually a work stoppage isn't the worst thing in the world, because that's how things get done sometimes. But this is going to be an interesting one. This is something that we haven't seen, I don't think, in my lifetime necessarily.
Did I say that you had talked yourself into White Sox recap? I think what I meant to say is you've talked yourself into minor league recap. So, but either way, we're going to get you doing some recap. So that's pretty cool. And, we're going to get some of that. In some ways, less work. You just get to, you get to do your poetry slam, not necessarily your very well researched and drafted and redrafted poetry. So yeah, I'm sorry, maybe I misspoke. I think I did say earlier White Sox recaps. I think I meant Charlotte Knights or perhaps Kannapolis Cannonballers recap. So strap in. It's going to be fun. You'll have some. You'll be able to get some new souvenirs to put up on the back of the wall there from the different affiliates. So good news for our minor league coverage. Maybe bad news for a major league season, but we'll see. Christmas is past. It's not coming again for a while, but maybe there's a gift under the tree in March or April or May or June or July. We've started a season at the end of July before, Zach, so it's not like it's unprecedented anymore.
And I think I've said this is all really depressing and stuff like that, but I think part of it is that we almost have a responsibility as fans, if we are actually supporting the players, to be like, you know what, I really hate losing games, but if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. That's how labor and solidarity works. I'm not going to pretend like I have a huge stake in things, but I know that my interests align with the players much more than they do with the owners. And so if being deprived of a couple months of baseball, contrary to popular belief, I don't think baseball is dying. I don't think it's going anywhere. If it takes a couple months of lost games to really put those people on, up against the wall, then
if it results in a significant step forward rather than this sort of like, well, we got to, it's sort of felt that way in 2020 where it's like, well, everybody's looking at us, so we better start playing. Even though we hate each other, we don't really want to play for you, and you don't really want to pay us. So yeah, if it took that kind of sacrifice, I would hope that most fans, as much as they're going to be dying, especially after enough negative wind chill days in Chicago, just like, oh my God, just give me some normalcy. I need to see spring training. I need to know that I can freeze my ass off on the 31st of March at Sox Park. But I, hope, knowing that maybe there's a greater good ahead by just taking a little step back if it need be, in order to have. It's only got, you can say peace. It's never going to be peace. There's always going to be some warring going on, right? But I mean, closest thing we can get to peace, that's the best for the game. Imagine not worrying about this and having both sides be happy for like 5 years. That seems impossible, but it's not impossible. And if it was, man, we wouldn't have to talk about this crap for like 5 years, and hopefully we just spill into the next agreement, right?
Maybe this is all Jerry Reinsdorf's master plan. He's secretly on our side. Little did he know when he hired Arturas Karnisovas to run the Bulls, that the resurgent Bulls would keep the White Sox fans happy enough through April, May, and June to not be mad at the players when games are getting lost, So, and in all seriousness, that's what that's why I say that as fans, we kind of have a little bit of a responsibility to an extent, because that ownership, the entire crux of their strategy here, is that we are the ones who are going to apply the pressure to the players. We're going to be the ones holding up the signs and calling them greedy and selfish, and kind of denying them all of the trappings that are supposed to come with being beloved professional athletes and stuff like that. So I would like to think that we can, after 25 years of losses on the player side, given the current, again, social climate, we can come to some kind of understanding of what's really going on here and know where our fights should lie.
Jerry just wants to give you the opportunity, because you weren't alive after all, to write that sign. You want to be able to call those players the greedy pigs that they are. Okay, you heard it. Zach Hayes has broken the news. White Sox will be moving in 2022 back to the baby blue zip-up reds, which means red pinstripes, because the White Sox fans are going to want to see red. So guess what? We have news. It's trickled out. Uniform change, and it's Zach Hayes. Direct all your mail and tweets to him, not me. Zach, I think this probably covers all we need to, even though I think we've scratched several full podcasts in just this discussion. And who knows, not a whole lot of stuff going on. So maybe we'll have one of those podcasts sooner than later. But thank you for joining up with me and letting our readership and sometimes even viewership learn a little bit more about you.
I don't know, man. You let me talk long enough to lose my train of thought about 15 minutes ago. So I think you're the one who did me a favor.
So now we're just
I
both
certainly
working
did
on
y'all none,
fumes.
but thank you. Thank you.
All right. For Zach Hayes, again, my closest friend and the very best Southside Soxer out there ever, probably for all time. No offense to the old guard. It's just the way it is. Sorry. The metrics point to it. For Zach Hayes, I am Brett Ballantini, wrapping up number 79. Hey, welcome back. Nice of all you to remember. There's a thing called Southside Sox and a thing called Southside Sox Podcast. We're here. Please continue to frequency. If you don't really care that much about prospects, what else you got to do? Vote in the goddamn top prospect poll. Please read about the guys you might never read about. We're in like the 90s and the 80s right now. They might never get a story written about them. This is these guys' time to shine. Hey, give them a little shine. Drop a comment that's something aside from the guy's got a funny name and got teased in school. All right. That's what we got going right now. Hopefully we're going to have more podcasts to come. We'll see what SB Nation says. If we sold enough ads, if you guys brought enough products, we'll probably be back. All right. Thanks, Zach. And thanks everybody for listening. Without you, of course, there's no point for us even being here. So we'll have something back at you probably sooner than you're even ready, but strap in, stay tuned. We'll be back soon.